I've already mentioned a little bit about Ishmael. Let's look at him in greater detail. Ishmael is the son of Hagar and Abraham.
We see a very sad thing in this week's Parsha Vayera. A boy, Ishmael, is placed under a shrub, perhaps to die, because his mother and he have run out of water as they wander the desert. His mother Hagar cannot stand to see him suffer any longer. But then an amazing thing happens. An angel speaks out to her, says, "Come, lift up the boy and hold him by the hand, for I will make a great nation of him." Sure enough, there was nothing to be afraid of. God opens her eyes and she sees a wellspring of water. Perhaps it had been there all along. What's interesting about this act of redemption is that the angel feels the need to ask the crying Hagar what's troubling her. If the angel had half a brain, he would have known she was afraid for Ishmael's life. Perhaps the angel is suggesting Hagar is overlooking something. For one, yes, there's that spring of water. But even if the spring hadn't been there all along, Hagar has something working for her. A promise.
What happens in Genesis 16 is that Sarah gets a little frustrated. They've been apparently living in Canaan for 10 biblical years, and they're not producing any children. And so Sarah gets a little concerned and says, maybe I can't produce children, so why don't you take my maidservant Hagar and sleep with her? Abraham doesn't object, gets it on with Hagar, and she conceives. And then it says that Hagar is kind of giving these looks to Sarah. I'm more of a woman than you. Is it catty and petty? Totally. I traveled to Ghana in West Africa, and what defines a woman is how many children you have. And if Sarah cannot produce a child, Sarah's not really much of a woman. And here's Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman of Sarah, that is more of a woman than Sarah. So you can see Hagar probably having a little bit of fun with this. Sarah complains to Abraham, and Abraham says, "It's your maid. You do to her what you see fit." And it says that Sarah was abusing Hagar to the point where Hagar tries to run away.
You know Sarah, the mother of all Israel. Apparently Sarah, who hadn't yet had a child of her own, didn't like the fact that Hagar, her servant, was carrying her husband Abraham's baby, even though she'd suggested this arrangement in the first place. She made Hagar's life miserable. Finally, Hagar fled Sarah's harassment, and then this angel came along and said, "Hagar, slave of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going?" And she said, "I am running away from my mistress Sarah." And the angel said to her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her harsh treatment." In doing so, Hagar experienced three things: more servitude, more affliction, and more strangerness. Hagar is a servant. She's afflicted by Sarah. And not only is she herself an Egyptian, a stranger in these parts, her name, Hagar, literally means in Hebrew, the stranger. What she didn't know is that these three things are ingredients in the Torah's recipe for nationhood. Earlier, God promised Abraham that he would have a child who would become a great nation. God brought Abraham into this trippy dream state and said, "I know you're an old man and you have no children, but you will. That's the good news. The bad news is that these children will go on to experience exile, strangeness in a land not theirs. They'll be afflicted in slavery." And lo and behold, Abraham's children through Sarah become a great nation. So just as Israel went from becoming a family to becoming a great nation in Egyptian slavery, Hagar and her children are also bound for greatness.
An angel intervenes and tells Hagar, "Hey, I've heard you're crying. You will have a son. You will call him Ishmael." Ishmael literally means God has heard. And it says, "Your son will be a wild ass of a man," because there's good news, right? "And from him will be many people, but you need to have trust." And so Hagar goes back, she produces Ishmael, and then eventually Sarah produces Isaac. And this is a couple chapters later, chapter 21 of Genesis. Sarah doesn't like that Ishmael is playing with Isaac. And so Sarah complains again, and Abraham says, "Hagar, you and your son, you gotta leave." And he gives her some provisions, and they go off into the desert. Well, unfortunately, they run out of water, and Hagar can't handle watching her child wither and die of starvation. So she leaves her child next to a bush and goes on her way so that she doesn't have to face it. Real sad story. Again, another angel intervenes and says, oh no, it's all good. God is going to protect Ishmael because, again, Ishmael is a descendant of Abraham. And so God is going to protect them. And then a water source emerges, and essentially Ishmael and Hagar live happily ever after. The only time Ishmael's ever talked about again is when, after Abraham dies, Isaac and Ishmael come together to bury their father. I felt that it was worth telling this story for a number of different reasons. Hagar is this innocent victim. Sarah's kind of a not a nice person. Ishmael, according to Islamic tradition, is the father, the great ancestor of Islam. And I mentioned this in the previous episode. God's covenant promised that the descendants of Abraham were going to inherit this land of Canaan.
And so it began. The Jews, the sons of Isaac. The Arabs, the sons of Ishmael. But what most people find important to remember is that in the end, the two sons came together to bury their father.